seat. Mr. Barton, does that device work? Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's working?
Yes.
I will try to keep this microphone as close as I can. State your full name for the record, please.
Roy Henry Barton, Jr.
All right, Mr. Barton, you're going to have to speak up louder. You have a very soft voice. We can't hear you. So if you'll do me a favor, try to speak to that back wall, if you would.
Roy Henry Barton, Jr.
Thank you, sir. Do you go by Rusty?
I do.
How old are you today?
71.
What is your educational background?
2 years of college.
And what did you study there?
Business administration.
Where did you go to school?
Montlow State Community College.
Where's that located?
In between Tullahoma, Tennessee and Lynchburg, Tennessee.
After you did that, what type of work did you get in? I believe, are you in sales?
I am, yes, but when I started, I was the bookkeeper for the dealership.
How long have you been doing sales?
Over 52 years.
In the 52 years that you've been doing sales, what type of things do you sell?
Construction equipment, bulldozers, backhoes.
Heavy machinery?
Yes.
If you would, just tell the jury, as part of your job as a salesman, do you have a route? What do you do? Just kind of inform them of what your everyday job is like as a salesman.
I have a designated territory, 11 counties in central middle Tennessee. The core of them, which is about 5 counties I've covered the entire time. The rest of the outlying counties from the core has been, it changes as they change territories and salespeople and stuff like that.
Is this inside sales or outside sales?
Outside sales.
So these are, do you have to cold call? Do you find your own clients, or how does that work?
Well, since I've been doing it so long, I do very little cold calling, but as new businesses start up, especially nowadays with landscaping.
Is it John Deere, or what type of things do you sell?
John Deere.
Do you sell mainly like bulldozers, heavy machinery to construction companies or to farms, or what type of businesses do you deal with mostly?
All cities, counties, utility districts, farmers do buy quite a bit because I have all of my territory is very rural, so I don't have any large contractors. The guys that do the big state jobs for the most part.
Are you from the city or from the country?
I live in Tullahoma, so.
So tell us about that. What size of a city or town is that?
Tullahoma is about 18,000 people, and I was born there.
Your whole life been there?
Yes.
Do you have a lot of relatives there?
Yes.
A lot of friends?
Yes.
Is it a place that you consider close to your heart?
It is my heart. My daughters live there. It's home.
Right. And I'm not going to ask your daughters' names, but you have 2 adult daughters, is that right?
Correct.
And they're your joy? Are they your joy? You love your daughters?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And grandkids?
4.
Now, as a salesman, tell the jury, if you would, are you an extroverted person or an introverted person? Do you like to talk?
No.
But as a salesperson, I guess you'd have to do a lot of talking, is that right?
No, you do a lot of listening.
Listening?
Mm-hmm.
And when you interact with other people, is it important to listen to what they need?
Correct.
Is it important to listen to what their concerns are?
Yes.
Is it important to take details?
They generally tell you.
Yeah, they'll tell you how they feel about things?
Yes. I mean, they know as much about my equipment as I do, so they tell me what they want.
And is your business, is it one that you actually have policies and you have forms and you have computer and things that you have to do when you're doing your sales?
Oh, yes.
What type of tools do you use to do your job?
Well, I have my company computer, and with that is provided all the specifications, for equipment. Most everything now there's no hard copies for literature. I mean, you just go on the internet and look up John Deere, just like anybody can.
Do you have, I guess, templates or forms on the computer that you use for quotes and stuff like that?
Yes.
Do you have to pay attention to detail on that?
I do, but I generally get somebody in the office to do that for me now. I don't keep up with the computer stuff that much.
How heavy is the sales when it comes to dealing with numbers and crunching numbers and things like that?
I don't understand what that question means.
Do you have to figure out how much things cost and how much percentage and anything, do any math in your job?
That's the way that it's done, but in the last several years, I have a sales manager that does that. With this newer company, the sales manager does it for me because we've had to change systems again, and I just haven't caught on to the new operating system.
When it comes to doing public speaking, do you like to do that?
Not particularly.
Do you like to have confrontational settings?
Not at all.
Are you more comfortable in a different type of atmosphere when talking with people?
No.
Are you comfortable at all talking with people?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Do you like being a salesperson?
I love it.
And could you see yourself doing any other type of work, or is sales just what you do?
Well, considering I've been doing it for 52 years, I think that's, yes, sales is what I do.
Are you successful at it?
I must be.
Is that yes, you are?
Yes, I are. Yes, I am.
I'm from South Carolina, so I sometimes say things differently too. You agree, though, that you do talk for a living?
Yes.
And when you're a salesperson, is it fair to say that you have an objective when you're meeting with people?
Yes.
You want to make the sale.
Correct.
So you have to be persuasive?
I'm not a pushy salesman. One of the pluses of doing this so long is people know me, they come to me, so I don't have to go out and say mine's better than theirs and that kind of stuff. It's different than if you were a 30-year-old person out getting new into the sales and none of the customers know you. So
in some ways, you're either persuasive in a good sense or in a bad sense. Would that be true in your job?
I would assume yes.
But you're trying to get someone to make a decision, is that right?
Yes.
You understand today that when you are answering the questions, the only thing I'm asking you, the decision I need you to help the jury make, is to get to the truth.
Correct.
That's all I'm asking you. You understand that?
I do.
Okay. I'm not asking you to make a case against anybody or anything else. Can we agree that your job is to tell us the truth?
Correct.
The whole truth?
And nothing but.
All right, let's go back to, you're from Alabama, is that right? Excuse me, Tennessee, I apologize. From Tennessee?
I'm from Tennessee.
Okay. And you are a Tennessee.
There's a big difference.
That's true. And you are a Tennessee fan, is that right?
I am.
And orange is your color, is that correct?
That is correct.
And how many, in your small town, how many people know your family?
A good number. I'm amazed at times at how many people are there that I do not know. But because we have an Air Force base, there's a lot of people that come and go.
And your grandfather was well known in the community?
Correct.
Was he involved in law enforcement?
He was.
Tell the jury about that, please.
All of my young life, childhood life, up to my probably 20s, my grandfather was either the chief of police in Tullahoma or the sheriff of Coffee County, which Tullahoma is in Coffee County.
Do you have respect for law enforcement?
Very much so.
Do you understand that they have a hard job to do some days?
I do that.
Even when they're investigating a former lover for murder?
I do.
Now, if I asked you if you were a fan of Detective Hayes and Detective Pope, which one would you be less of a fan of? Again, honesty is what I'm after.
Okay. Who would I be less a fan of?
Yes.
Sergeant Pope.
If I asked you to say between Sergeant Pope and Detective Hayes, which was the good cop and which was the bad cop when they talked to you?
Detective Hayes was the good cop.
Do you remember Detective Hayes here?
I did not recognize him, but yeah.
Are you married?
No, I am not.
Are you divorced?
Yes.
How long were you married for?
36 years.
36?
I think.
When did that marriage end?
The divorce was final in 2012.
Did your former wife work in the court system at all?
She did. She was a court reporter.
And how long did she do that?
I think 32 years.
Did you have some idea from your family connections and from your former wife's job about the legal system or the legal community?
Probably not as much as you would think, because I was never involved in anything with going to court or anything like that. My grandfather being the local police chief and the sheriff, you know, I was single digits teenager when he did most of that. And then my wife, when she was a court reporter, my biggest job was delivering transcripts back to people.
Sure. Never thought you'd be in the middle of a murder trial testifying as a witness, did you?
Never in my entire life.
Do you want to be here?
Not at all.
You understand why you're here, though, right?
I do.
Are you an outdoorsman?
I am.
Tell the jury, what are your hobbies when it comes to hunting, fishing, things like that?
Hunting.
What type of hunting do you do?
Almost all is deer hunting, whitetail.
How avid of a hunter are you?
Some would say very.
Do you ever travel to other states to hunt?
I do.
We talked about Kansas.
Kansas, Colorado, Texas, Idaho, Montana, Canada, Mexico. You want more?
Sure. Where else have you traveled?
New Mexico, Florida, South Florida.
Mainly deer hunting?
Deer, elk, antelope, waterfowl, quail, dove.
Do you use firearms and a bow?
I do hunt with a bow some, yes.
Do you use one more than the other?
No. Bow season for me is very short, and I don't use it a whole lot. But the rest of the time, I'm generally a muzzle loader and rifle hunter.
Do you have any experience being connected to a farm?
My other grandfather, not the chief of police, my daddy's dad, they lived across the street from us, or we lived across the street from them, however you want to look at it. And he had probably a couple 100-acre farm, ran about 80 Black Angus cows, and they had a little country store.
Did you have a farm at some point?
I did. I inherited my mother's farm and with my sister, and had it for a few years.
And how big was that?
115 acres.
What did the farm do? Produce anything, or was it an animal farm or crops?
When my mom and her husband had it, they raised cows also. And then after my sister and I inherited it, I had one of the neighbors got to cut hay off of it. It was a hill farm, pretty steep hill. And the rest of the time it was, just a place for me to go deer hunting.
Are you a person that can basically build a house from scratch?
No.
Do you have any skills in carpentry or anything like that?
In what?
Carpentry, building things?
Not very good at it. I would be more a framer than a finished carpenter.
Have you ever tried to build a house or add on to a house or doing construction?
My dad and I one time built a 20 by 20, we called it a barn, but it wasn't perfect.
How about farm equipment? What can you use?
The only thing that I ran down at the farm was a small Ford tractor.
Okay. What size, do you remember?
I do not remember the model.
Old type of tractor or more common new tractor?
It was like
wheels narrow up front or wide?
I'm sorry?
The wheels in the front, were they close together or wide?
You didn't run it close together. You didn't run a tricycle on a hill farm.
Okay.
So they were wide, yes. It was about a 95 model.
How about RTVs? You ever used an RTV, drive an RTV?
I have.
Do you own any?
I do not. I never have.
Any side-by-sides?
No.
Do you ever use those things during hunting?
No. Now, when you're saying I have a four-wheeler.
Okay, let's talk about that. What type of four-wheeler do you have?
It's a 1997 model Honda 200.
Do you take that hunting with you?
I have, but not in several years.
Anytime that you're hunting, do you ever use a four-wheeler or something like that to move deer?
Yes, I have tied a deer to the back of the four-wheeler and drug it.
And you said tied. How do you tie it?
Just with a rope to the luggage rack.
Nothing fancy, something simple just to move it?
Yeah.
Do you have a truck?
I do.
What kind of truck do you have?
Ford F-150.
Do you have a motorcycle?
I do.
What type of motorcycle do you have?
I have a Harley.
Which brand or model is it? Which model is it?
A Road King.
How long have you been riding motorcycles?
All my life.
Something you like to do?
Since I was 14, I should say. That's when I got my license.
Is that something you like to do?
It is, not as much so in the last few years.
Do you own any guns?
I own a bunch of guns.
Tell the jury, if you would, what type of guns that you have. Is the list too long? I think as you're saying, you said to law enforcement.
Okay, I was going to say, you say that? Yes.
Yes.
The list is too long.
I think when law enforcement asks you about guns,
I couldn't even rattle them all off if you wanted me to, but I could tell you a good number of them.
Roughly about how many do you have?
I don't know now. I probably have 40.
And out of the 40, how many of those are handguns?
Probably 6, 8, maybe 10. I don't know.
Did you ever talk to the defendant about how sometimes bullets and guns are tested?
Say again.
Did you ever talk to the defendant about have conversations about how guns and bullets are tested?
Not that I recall.
You don't remember doing that?
No, sir.
Where were your guns in 2018? Where were your guns stored?
They would have been in a storage building in my gun safes, except for the one or two that might have been in my pickup truck.
When law enforcement came and talked to you about this case, did they ask you where your guns were?
To the best of my recollection, yes, they did.
They were interested in your guns, were they not?
They were.
And they asked you where the guns were at?
I don't remember them asking them about being in the storage building in a gun safe, but I think they just asked me what I had and if I had any, I guess basically with me. And I told them that I didn't have any on my person, but that I had, I think, a couple in my truck.
You had 2 in your truck, I believe. Is that right?
I think that's right, yes.
357 revolver and a 40 caliber Glock?
Glock, yes.
Did you voluntarily turn over or give the 357 to law enforcement in this case?
I did.
And did you know that gun was tested or looked at by the GBI?
I didn't know that, but I kind of figured it was. That's why they got it.
Do you remember telling law enforcement about how many people knew where your guns were at?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember saying only 2 people remembered or knew where your guns were at? Yourself and I believe your daughter?
I don't remember saying that, no, sir.
Were they kept somewhere else besides your house?
Yes. Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
I did not keep any. I lived at my daughter's house at the time. I was in between houses, and I did not keep any guns in the house because her husband was not a gun person and was fearful of them. And so I kept them, and I had 3 gun safes, still do, and I kept them in a storage building, I don't know, a few miles down the road. And so all the guns were in there except, I guess, those 2 at the time that were in a bag in the kind of the back floorboard of my truck.
Do you remember when law enforcement came up and executed a search warrant to look at your guns?
Actually, I don't think they had a search warrant. They did for the house, and I guess they were looking for guns.
That's fine. Do you remember them coming up looking for your guns?
Yes, I do.
Now, you're junior, Roy Barton Jr., is that right?
That's correct.
Your dad is senior?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I know he's passed away. I'm not trying to go down that or anything, but did he have a lot of guns?
He had several. Most of them had been rolled down to me at this point.
Do you have pistols?
I think he had 3.
Were any of those a .38 special?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you know where those guns were at in 2018?
I do not.
Do you remember telling law enforcement that they were in Martha Jane's house?
With that, yes. I thought you meant like specifically in the house. No, they would have been there at Martha's house. Yes.
Wherever they were at in the house, is that right?
Correct.
But you don't know exactly what pistols he had, is that fair?
No, he had a Colt Python 357. He had a Browning 22, I think they called it a target pistol. And then he had gotten Martha Jane a pistol, and I really don't know what it was.
Had a 357?
I do not know.
I want to talk about Martha Jane. Who is Martha Jane Barton?
She is or was my dad's wife, second wife.
Stepmother?
Yes.
What year did they get married or come together?
1975.
And how long were they married?
Until he passed away in 2014.
In 1975, from 2014, where did they live?
They lived in the house that I was raised in with my mom and dad on Avoca Road. And then a few years after they got married, they built a new house on what's Carter Blake Road. And that's Martha still lives there.
How old is Martha today?
I think she's 83.
How would you describe Martha?
A good woman, worked at the bank for 53 years, I think. She's in very poor health now. She's had all kinds of procedures and heart valve replacements.
She's had heart issues.
Yes.
Doesn't do well with stress.
No.
And but in Tullahoma today, she lives still in the house?
Yes, she still lives in the house by herself.
Now help explain to the jury the relationship between Martha Jane, sometimes y'all refer to her as MJ, is that right?
That's correct.
So the relationship between Martha Jane and the defendant.
Martha and Melody's mom were first cousins.
So the defendant would be second cousins to Martha.
I don't really know how all that
One
works.
level down.
Yeah. Because
So
there's
related,
first cousin twice removed, and
sure, related by blood, but referred to as cousins, is that?
yes,
And you would be the stepson of Martha Jane.
correct.
When it described to the jury the relationship through the years and how close they were, the defendant and Martha Jane.
Very close. My dad, when he was alive, he was not much of anybody of a man that wanted to drive. Martha always drove, so anytime Martha needed to go basically anywhere, which most of the time was to go to Nashville to the heart doctor, Melody would come up and get Martha and then drive her to Nashville to the doctor, and did that off and on for years.
Would you describe the defendant's relationship with Martha Jane more akin to a mother-daughter?
Very much so.
If you could say, who does the defendant love the most in the world, where would Martha Jane be on that?
Very high on that list.
Would you describe Martha Jane as a God-fearing lady?
I didn't understand.
Would you describe Martha Jane as a God-fearing lady?
Very much so.
A Christian?
Yes.
She didn't know about your sexual affair with the defendant, did she?
I don't think so.
Would that have broken her heart?
I don't know. Probably.
She'd been disappointed in you?
Yes.
The two of you hid it from her, didn't you?
Yes.
Through the years, how often would the defendant come and see Martha Jane?
Are you talking like 30 years ago up to now or then?
Yeah, what I want you to do is to explain to the jury, some relatives see each other once a year at family reunions. Some relatives
Right.
never see each other for 5 years. Some relatives never see each other at all. How often would the defendant come up and physically be involved in Martha Jane's life?
That I do not know, because I didn't always know even when she would come up. I mean, she would come up and do things, and and I wouldn't know it.
Would it be more than occasional?
Yes, I would think so.
So a common event for the defendant?
I would think so.
A lot, I guess, is another way to say it.
That's a relative question, so I don't know. Again, I didn't know every time that she came up through the years. Sometimes it might be weeks later, my dad would say that Melody had been up.
When they would see each other, would the defendant come to Martha Jane's house or home?
Yes.
And would she be family and have access to the home?
Yes.
Come and go as she please?
Yes.
Full access to everywhere in the house?
Yes.
Could even come to the house when Martha Jane's not there?
Yes.
Did the defendant help Martha Jane with her property and things in her house?
She did.
I want to talk to you about the defendant. You see Melody Farris here in court today.
I do.
Describe something she's wearing and point her out for the record, please.
Glasses on top of her head, gray jacket, black top.
Just point to where she's at, please. Now let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
All right, so
Is it awkward being here in court in front of her?
It's awkward being in court, period. So yes.
When it comes to your feelings for the defendant at this moment, how much love do you have for her?
Don't know that that's a measurable item.
That's what you have to do in court, sir. Tell me how much love you have for her right at the moment.
I do not know.
Do you love her?
I do not know.
But you did love her in the past, correct?
Correct.
You were in love with her, fair to say?
Yes.
And she was in love with you, fair to say?
Yes.
Now, you've had an opportunity to listen to some of your recordings in this case. Is that true?
I have.
And you know that there are recorded jail calls and other calls with you and the defendant?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury, did y'all have a special kind of words or codes or terms of endearment that you would use with each other?
I'm assuming that you're thinking about some of them. Yeah, we did.
Like what were some of those phrases y'all would share all the time on the phone or when you talk?
One of them would be all.
A-L-L, all,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
What does that mean? At the time when this was, you were still together.
Yes. Yeah.
Are you telling this jury today that y'all are not together, right?
Correct.
Right. At the time, even after the arrest, when you were still together, what did all mean?
It meant, and it kind of started back when Dad got sick and Martha was having the heart surgery. You know, don't know what we would have done without Melody being up there taking care of Martha, because then I was having to take care of Dad. And so we talked most of the time. We talked several times every day, and it was, okay, all. We got this. Get started. Do the day. You know.
To encourage one another, maybe?
Yeah, just you know, okay, you take care of this, I'll take care of that, and we get through the day.
Would that encapsulate for better or for worse?
No,
It wouldn't.
no, it was not a. I wouldn't put it as an emotional love you kind of thing. It was a let's go tackle the day kind of thing.
But you would say that to her, and she would say that to you during this investigation and after the arrest. Is that true?
It is.
So it applied to this situation.
It means just handle the day. Do what's got to be done.
So my question is,
be strong.
My question is, yes or no, it does apply to her murder charges.
I think it applies to the whole thing. I wouldn't say specifically the charges.
But her situation in 2018,
Yes.
2019,
Yeah, the situation.
right, when she's been arrested for murder, y'all are saying all to each other, right?
Correct.
How about, did you ever say the word forward? Tell the jury what forward would mean when you would say it to one another.
Forward is a very similar thing to all. It just keep moving forward, keep going, get things done, handle what life throws at you.
How about, would she ever say she wants your hand on her waist?
She did.
What does that mean?
At my father's funeral, she came up and we were standing by the casket, and you know, everybody comes by and you hug and thank them and all that, and we were just standing there, and I put my hand on her waist. It was kind of it was a strength for me to get through the day.
And she has said that to you after being arrested for murder. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
What age did you meet the defendant? How old was she?
The first time I met her,
I think you met her when she was 15,
that would probably be about right.
1975?
Correct.
Where did y'all meet?
At Dad and Martha's wedding.
Really? And what did you think of her when she was 15?
I don't even remember.
Do you remember when her and Gary got together? Because they got together young, I believe. So at 15, how close were you with her during her teenage years and the early years?
Not at all.
Not at all?
Not at all.
Just kind of knew of her? You just knew of her?
Yes.
How often would you see her? I'm going to get to 2014, but before then, how often would you see her?
Rarely. Very rarely.
Now, how smart is the defendant?
I don't know.
Is she smart or not smart?
Well, I would consider her smart, yes.
Would you consider her hardworking?
Yeah, very.
She didn't suffer a slacker, did she? She didn't like lazy people.
She was not a slacker, no.
She didn't like lazy people, did she?
No.
Would you describe her as a take charge person?
Yes.
Would you describe her as a person that gets things done?
Yes.
In fact, that's what you told law enforcement, right?
I'm assuming I did, or you wouldn't have asked.
Is she a planner? Someone makes plans?
I would say yes.
Does she have a backbone?
Yeah, she does.
In fact, I believe in 2014, you first talked about it. How much did she help with Martha Jane and your father during that time?
Oh, she was an absolute tremendous help. I don't know what we would have done without her. One time she was up, and of course, Dad and Martha both. I mean, Dad had a stroke, went in the hospital, then went in the nursing home, and he never came home. And Martha, then during that period of time, had tests and then heart valve replacement. And one of the things that happened was the sewer system backed up and flooded the house, and she met with the septic tank people to get it cleaned out. So,
she gets things done, doesn't she?
yes,
She gets her hands dirty, doesn't she?
yes.
All right, let's look at March of 2014. Why is that month and year significant in the context of you and the defendant?
Say it again.
March 2014.
That probably would be when Dad went in the hospital. I didn't remember that month exactly.
Okay, and that's when the defendant came up to Tennessee, is that right?
Yes. She was already there, actually, when Dad had his stroke. Her and Martha were, at the time, were already in Nashville at the doctor's office.
And then kind of later on, a couple months later, I think it was in September 2014, was it not, that things changed between friendship to romance?
I do not recall not even the month.
Do you recall the year? Was it in 2014?
Yes.
Tell the jury how that happened. What was going on?
We were just in close contact with each other, almost day in, day out, trying to handle everything, and it became, we became a thing.
So your relationship with her started in 2014.
Yes.
Did you know she was married?
I did.
Did you know she was married to Gary?
I did.
And I'm not asking for details or anything, but you two were intimate during this relationship?
We were.
And so you would know whether or not she has any tattoos on her?
I would.
Tell the jury what tattoos she has.
She has a red heart and the Roman numerals XO.
XO tattoos on her, right?
Yes.
And those tattoos represent you, do they not?
No, they do not.
They don't?
No, sir, they do not.
Who do they represent?
They do not represent anybody.
But you were with her when she got those tattoos, right?
I was.
And y'all went to the tattoo parlor shop together and got them?
We did.
So you were there when she got them?
Correct.
And y'all both like to drink Crown Royal, is that right?
That is correct.
And so you're with her when she gets the tattoos, then she gets the tattoos, and it's both of the drinks that you like. Is that right?
Yes, the XO is for the Crown Royal XO. That's
how about her phone having XO in it for you? Do you know anything about that?
No, I didn't know that.
Do you know if she's ever referred to you or the number for you as being XO?
I do not recall that.
You didn't know that or don't know that?
I do not recall that, so I don't know whether it...
how many times do you think you and the defendant, and again, I'm not trying to get into the list of details or anything like that, but you two would rendezvous at a certain place, is that right?
Yes.
What city would you both meet up at?
Dalton, Georgia.
And Dalton was about 106 miles from Tullahoma, your home, is that right?
Yeah.
Takes about an hour and 45 minutes to get there.
Roughly, yes.
Did you know it's about 80 miles from her former home in Cherokee County?
I just kind of figured it was about halfway.
Takes about an hour and a half from her house to get there, is that right?
That I don't know.
But I guess the point is, why y'all were meeting Dalton is because it was halfway between the houses.
Right.
And when you met in Dalton, there's a certain exit that you would meet at.
Correct.
What exit was that?
333.
333. What hotels would you stay at there?
Mostly the Super 8.
How many years were y'all meeting up there? From 2014 to 2018?
Yes.
Who would pay for the rooms for y'all two?
I would.
Always?
Always.
Why is that?
Just what I do.
Explain that to me. Why?
I always thought the man paid for things.
In the beginning, I think, did y'all meet there monthly?
Oh, I don't remember how often and when and that. I'm
But
sure there's records, but I don't.
Did it progress to meeting weekly?
At times.
Did you meet more than one time during the week?
It's possible that we did. I do not recall that we did, but
You wouldn't dispute if
no,
that was the
oh,
case?
No. Again, I know there's records. So.
Did you ever ask her when y'all were meeting up, what is she telling her family why she's not there? Did you ever ask her?
I don't think so.
You never asked her what excuse or what are you telling them when you're coming to meet me? You never got curious to ask her how she's doing this? Not one time?
No. I'm trying to think how to say it. She could go and come as she pleased, and so she was very open to get to leave home and be gone and come back. Nobody kept tabs on her.
She wasn't a prisoner in her home, is
No,
what you're saying.
Not at all.
My question, though, is if you're meeting weekly and you're having an affair, are you not worried about her husband going, where is my wife? Did that not ever pop up or y'all talk about it?
No, it didn't. I guess we did talk about it, but I think she got to do her thing and he did his thing, and I don't think they didn't keep tabs on each other.
Right, but you're not trying to tell this jury that y'all were having an open relationship.
And I guess I'm saying that they did.
Based on what?
What she said.
What she says?
Yes.
Okay. So were y'all open at the wedding, Emily's wedding, going around openly engaging in a romantic relationship at Emily's wedding? Is that what you're telling the jury?
I don't recall us being very openly romantic at the...
Right, that's the point. You weren't, correct?
I don't think so. I mean, we might have sat at the same table at times and we might have danced together, but I wouldn't call us. I did that with other people there too.
Sure. My question is, you weren't being openly romantic in front of her family at Emily's wedding, were you?
I wouldn't think so.
That's because y'all were hiding the relationship, right?
Yes.
Now, you had a girlfriend named Christina Grant I think in 2017. Is that right?
I did.
And you were hiding the relationship that you had with Melody from her?
Correct.
And she did something that you did not want her to do. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Tell the jury what she did.
She sent an email to Gary Farris, Melody's husband, telling him, I don't know exactly what it said because I never saw it, but telling him that Melody was having an affair with me or vice versa, however it was worded.
I think that was in October of 2017. Would that be?
Yes, I think that's correct.
Now you just said on the stand that you never saw the email, but did you not see an email, a copy of the email that the defendant took on her phone from Gary's phone?
I could have, but I do not recall seeing it.
Judge, you might just have one more. But you did talk to Christina about the email she sent.
I did.
What did you tell her to do?
I don't remember what I told her to do. I just told her that what she had done was pretty stupid and she shouldn't have done that.
Did you not tell her that to tell Gary it was just a rumor? Do you remember telling Christina to get back in contact with Gary and let him know that it was just a rumor because he's a lawyer and he would understand a rumor?
I do not recall that, no, sir.
Were you concerned that because Gary was an attorney that he could drag her information and her lifestyle into a court?
Yes.
Do you recall telling Christina that he could bring you in and ask you about your sexual partners or things like that?
Say again.
Do you remember telling Christina that you were concerned that Gary could bring her in and ask her about her relationships with other people?
I do not recall that, but I could understand that I might have said that.
Do you remember what happened with the defendant when Gary got that information from Christina? What did she say to you?
What did Melody say to me?
Yes.
That Gary came into her room and told her that he had gotten that email.
And how did she feel about that? How did the defendant feel about Gary finding out from Christina?
I think she was just upset because Christina had done that.
Mad at Christina?
Yes.
Mad at you?
I don't think so.
She's very forgiving towards you?
I don't think at that point I'd done anything wrong.
When you would, through the years, communicate with the defendant, would you talk to her in person? Would you meet her face to face? We know about going up to hotels and meeting in Dalton, but outside of that, would you ever just go and do things with her, go out to eat or do other things?
Yeah, sometimes when she would come to town, we would go somewhere and eat or something.
And when you would talk to her, how many times a day, tell the jury, how many times a day would you talk to her on the phone, whether it's by voice or by text messages?
Off and on all day.
Almost every day?
Almost every day.
What was your pattern? What time of the day would y'all talk and how would you do it?
Well, I didn't know there was a pattern. It was just random phone calls and random texts. I don't think there was a pattern.
Would you get up in the morning and call her?
Probably.
Would you call her through the day?
Mm-hmm.
Would you call her in the evenings?
Mm-hmm. Or she would call me or whatever. Yeah.
So once you get up in the morning, would she be the first one you would call?
Not necessarily.
Normally?
I don't know. I mean, that I don't know.
Would she be one of the first persons you would call?
Probably.
And during the day, how many times do you think you would call her during the day every day?
I cannot answer that question. I mean, I'm sure you have records and could tell every specification there is about it, but I couldn't answer that.
Was it less than 5 times or more than 5 times?
I'm sure it varied. I'm sure it was both.
And what things would y'all talk about?
Everything from the weather to the kids to the grandkids to Martha, Daddy. I mean, you know, just life.
Now, I'm going to talk to you about July 10th of 2018. Do you remember when you had another interview with the sheriff's office and some people from the TBI?
On July the 10th?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Do you remember July 2018 speaking with law enforcement?
I do, yeah.
Was there a time that when you were speaking with the law enforcement that the defendant just kind of unannounced showed up?
She came into town, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Okay, yes.
All right, tell the jury about the time she came into town when law enforcement was there.
I think that we had my attorney and myself had an interview with Detective Hayes, and I'm assuming since you said it that way that was the day that the TBI was there too. And I think after that meeting, and my attorney's office was downtown Tullahoma, so after that I left and went to Martha's house to check on her, see how she was doing, and then on my way back to town, I noticed that Melody was behind me.
What vehicle was she in?
The Mercedes.
She had not told you she was coming up, correct?
Correct.
It was a surprise, right?
Yes.
Unannounced, would you say?
Yes.
And she was there because of why?
I guess because I was with the police.
What did she ask you?
What did they say?
What did you tell her?
I'm assuming whatever they said. I don't remember what conversations we had.
What else did she say to you?
Don't remember exactly, but I would say, why are you here?
And did she give you any instructions or anything to say or not say to them?
No.
She tell you not to talk to law enforcement?
Probably. I don't remember that for a fact, but.
But has she told you through this case not to talk to law enforcement?
Yes. No. Not to talk to them, but I mean, I'm not going to run and hide, but just don't sit down and have a conversation with them. Be polite.
So you're saying she did not tell you to stop talking to law enforcement?
Okay, there's talking to somebody, and then there's telling them, answering questions, and I think that's what was meant.
So tell me that. You're telling me that she told you not to answer questions of law enforcement?
That was my assumption of what it meant, yes.
She didn't want you to give law enforcement anything that could be used against her, right?
You don't want nothing to be used against.
Just he can answer. He's not speculating. He talked to her and had face-to-face conversations.
He doesn't know what she was thinking, so he can answer what she said and maybe how he interpreted it.
Go ahead and answer the question.
Sir?
You can answer the question. Did she talk to you and tell you not to talk to law enforcement because they were trying to get information on her?
I don't think it was spread out verbatim like that. It was just, don't talk.
I mean, it wasn't about anything else except the murder case, right?
Correct.
It didn't have any. I mean, there's no other reason you're talking to law enforcement, is there?
No.
Gary was found on July 5th of 2018. There's a calendar right there. Do you see that Thursday, July 5th, 2018?
I do.
And almost a year later, on June 18, 2019, the defendant was arrested. And you know that, don't you?
I do.
How do you know that?
I'm the one that carried her to the police station, turned her over to the police.
Because she was staying with you in Tullahoma?
No, she was not staying with me. We were together, having lunch.
Physically present with her that day, right?
Sir?
You were physically with her that day?
I was, that afternoon, yeah.
She was in your vehicle?
She was.
And y'all had been together for how many days?
We had not been together for days. We had just left that afternoon to go, we were going to go have something to eat and then go someplace else, like Franklin or something.
So you're trying to say you were not socializing or hanging out or being together as a couple during this time?
Well, we were going to go have lunch, a late lunch, so I would however you want to word that, yes.
Well, how many days was she there before she got arrested?
Several.
How many is several? Are we talking days or weeks?
A week or 10 days.
And how many times out of the week or 10 days did you see her?
I do not recall.
Probably every day, wasn't it?
I wouldn't think so.
The day of the arrest, you actually, when she was in the car, you brought her to the police department, I believe.
I did.
And then after she was arrested, you talked to her on the phone numerous times. Is that right?
What time frame were we talking about?
In June and July and other dates after she was arrested? Now, I want to go from, how many times do you think you talked to her by phone? Let's go from July 4th of 2018, the 4th of July, to, let's just go after the arrest, October 31st of 2019. So from 4th of July in 2018 to Halloween in 2019. How many times do you think you talked to her on the phone? There's roughly 484 days during that time period. How many times do you think you talked to her on the phone?
A lot.
What is a lot?
I don't know. You have the number, I don't.
More than the number of days?
I'm sure.
How many text messages do you think you shared with her during that time?
You have the numbers. I do not.
How many times do you think you said, I love you, or something all or for to her during that time?
Every day, probably. Or every day we talked.
Because you were there to help her, right?
Of course.
You loved her, right?
Yes.
You were supporting her, right?
I was.
You're going to do what you can to help her out of this fix, right?
I was.
In 2018, when they talked to you about the case, the first time that law enforcement talked to you, I think it was the TBI that came out on July 6th. That was a Friday of 2018.
Correct.
Do you remember how many phones and phone numbers you told law enforcement that she had?
I do not.
Do you remember when you met with them again, changing that number or giving more information?
I do remember changing it. I don't remember what was said.
After the first interview, you gave information that she did have a burner phone. Is that right?
That's your terminology. I don't use the terminology of burner phones. Both of her phones were, I would call, a straight talk, that you actually purchased the minutes for. So,
would it be fair to say that one of the phones she used almost exclusively for you?
I do not know that.
And the other phone she used for public or other people?
I assumed that, yes, but I do not know that. Those they were her phones.
So her regular phone is one. Is that fair?
Say that again?
She has a regular phone, and then she had this other phone?
I think they were pretty well both identical. So.
Okay. But you didn't give law enforcement the other phone number the first time, right?
I don't know. I mean, I did not. I mean, I don't know the phone numbers. They were all in my phones.
Now, at some point when you met with law enforcement during this, you and your attorney, Bobby Carter, met with them and cooperated. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then when you met with them, you actually agreed to record calls between you and the defendant. Is that right?
That is correct.
And they actually gave you a recorder to record calls. Is that correct?
They did.
And you would actually try to do that at certain points?
I tried.
You tried to record some calls with her. And
With
that's
the
because
recorder, yes.
it was told to you, not only by your attorney, but during the conversations, that it's in your best interest to do that?
Yes.
And you want to help yourself. Is that true?
Absolutely.
But at some point, law enforcement had to come back to you and ask you about the recorder, didn't they?
They did.
And they had to ask you about the recorder because you actually told her about the recorder and recording the calls, right?
I did.
So let me get this straight. You want to help yourself because of the situation, and you agreed to record the phone calls with her, But you tell her you're recording the phone calls, right?
I did.
So she knew she was being recorded, is that correct?
Well, she knew that I tried. I never was successful at it.
Yeah, she knew you were recording the calls, right?
I never was successful at it.
I understand that because you told her, but she knew she was being recorded, right?
I told her that I had a tape recorder that Detective Hayes gave me, and that I was told and asked to try to record our phone calls.
And in fact, there was a conversation between you two that she said, didn't you say they were recording calls? And you were telling her, no, you were lying to her.
That's right.
And then they gave you after they confronted you about the recorder, you weren't forthcoming to tell them, oh, by the way, I did tell her. You lied to them, didn't you?
I did.
You told them you weren't recording. You didn't tell her you had the recorder, right?
You're correct.
And then they had Calios, the software on your phone that would record calls without having a recorder. Would that be fair?
Yes.
And you recorded a lot of those calls, right?
The way I understood how this worked, they put something on my telephone, and I mean, it was very odd the way it came through, but it came through, and then I would answer the phone, but at the same time, every phone call that I got from her through this system, also went directly to Detective Hayes.
Right.
And then I'm assuming was also recorded.
And counsel's going to ask you about those calls and what was recorded on those. But you agree with me that when they started doing the recordings on the Calios, that system, that was after you told her about the recorder, right?
Yes. Yeah. We went to that system after we tried the tape recorder.
All right. Help me on this timeline. She's arrested June 18th, 2019. This calendar's not open. June 18th, 2019. And then on June 25th, 2019, you come back to talk to law enforcement with your attorney to give some more information, right?
Okay, you lost me. Say that again.
The last conversation you had with law enforcement, the last recording, you recanted the statement you given earlier.
That was not the last time that I was with law enforcement. That was the next to the last time, I think.
Okay. In June of 2019, after the defendant was arrested,
right,
you did have a conversation with law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes, I think they came back the next week.
Okay. That next week, when you're talking to law enforcement, getting back to phones, did they not ask you if you ever met with a defendant in person and talked around the phones? Do you remember that?
I do.
And you told them, yes, we did meet in person and we did talk around the phones, right?
Correct.
So y'all were outside of law enforcement talking about the case so they couldn't hear it. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. And then they just took one more step and they asked you, did you have new phones? I call them burners. You may not like that term, but they asked you if you had other phones. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
And they asked you, did you talk about the case outside of the other phones that we had that we can listen to? And you said, yeah.
Yes.
So, is it not true that you were telling her the recording, I'm talking to them, don't say anything that can incriminate yourself?
No, that's not true.
It's not true.
I didn't say that.
Not one time?
No, sir.
It wasn't even implied one time?
Nope.
So why are you having these other phones to talk outside of the phone calls?
I wanted to make her comfortable so I could find out if there was anything that wasn't known.
Mm. You want to make her comfortable. Mm-hmm. So you just had to go buy these other burner phones so law enforcement didn't know that y'all were talking?
Correct.
You agree that's suspicious, right?
Of course it is.
And you're doing it, correct?
I did.
With a woman charged of murder and burning her own husband, right?
I wanted to know.
But you didn't tell law enforcement until they pulled it out of you, right?
You're not going to put a banner up. I tried to find out. I wanted to know.
I'm going to come back to some of these phone calls. But I want to talk about when you were... Let me try to step it back and lower things just a little bit. Any restroom?
No, but I could use some water.
Oh, sure. Do we have?
But there's not any here. Up here? It's empty.
Let me get you. I got one. I've got a bottle of water here. There's barely enough there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You go about. I was going to say let's go about 10 more minutes and take a break. So.
It's gonna be a while.
I know, but I'm sure the other folks want a break. You need one? You want a break?
No.
Oh, you're good? Okay. All right.
Mr. Barton, let me know when you're ready to go.
Okay.
When you were in the relationship with the defendant, you did or have some future plans to be together.
It was talked about. No plans.
No plans?
No plans.
None.
No specific plans.
Did the defendant tell you that Gary was sick?
Yes.
Tell the jury what she told you, what ailment he had.
My understanding was it was esophageal cancer.
Throat cancer.
Yes.
And you had somebody, a friend, a young man that had died from that?
That's correct.
What did she describe he would do because of this? What things would happen to him?
He would throw up blood.
She'd have to change the sheets and things like that?
I'm assuming, yeah.
I mean, did she tell you she'd
I don't
have to
remember
do that?
that specifically, but yeah.
Did she tell you she'd have to take care of him because he was throwing up?
Yes.
And she'd have to clean it up?
Yes.
And it was really bad?
I don't remember the extremity of it, but
Well, was there the thought that she told you that he could die?
yes.
And that it could be soon?
Again, I don't remember a time frame on it, but
All right.
yeah.
But you did have a plan that when he died from a natural death that y'all would hang out for about 6 months and see how things went before you started dating or getting together.
That number was said. It was actually a response to actually Detective Hayes.
So that was a plan, 6 months or so, and see how it went?
It's not a plan. It was just a speculation, a spot.
But you did that to let things settle after Gary passed, right? That was the plan.
It was not a plan. There was not a lot of detail about it. And the 6 months came, I repeated what Detective Hayes had said.
And you said that was so the family could see how the family responded to the relationship. Is that true?
I don't know. Did I say that?
That's what I'm asking. Do you remember saying that?
I don't know. I don't recall that.
Do you recall searching for wedding bands on the internet?
I do.
What type of wedding bands did y'all have in mind? Let's not say a plan, but what type of idea did y'all have and what type of wedding bands did y'all want?
We talked about plain gold bands.
To the degree that you would have these wedding bands, even if you weren't married, you would kind of go through the motions and hold yourself out like that, right?
Correct.
You don't think that's a plan?
I don't think it's a hardcore plan.
You just don't want to say plan, right?
It's your words, not mine.
No, sir. You had plans for wedding bands, and you searched for wedding bands, right?
I did search for wedding bands.
In fact, in June 28, 2018, you were searching for wedding bands for her, right?
Probably. Could have been Christina, but probably. Because I also looked up black diamonds, too.
So, it could have been for Christina?
Sir?
For Christina?
Uh-huh. Did you see that? When
you talked to law enforcement, the first time you talked to was July 7th, 2018 with the TBI. Do you remember that one?
It was not July 7th.
July 6th. I apologize. July 6th, that Friday?
Yes.
So on July 6th of 2018, you talked to the TBI. Agent Simmons, Agent Williams?
I remember the name Agent Simmons. I do not remember the lady agent's name.
Describe the agents for us. We've met them today, but describe, what do you remember about them?
I don't know, very, very professional. She, towards the end, she came across a little hard, but Simmons was very professional and very, not a problem at all. And I think there was a Coffee County Sheriff's deputy there too.
Was there?
I think so.
And then the second time was July 10th of 2018. I think y'all met at your attorney's office, is that right?
That's right.
And the TBI agents were there, but also Sheriff's Office? Detective Hayes, Detective Pope?
Yes. Not Coffee County.
Right, but from Cherokee County?
Yes.
And they came up on July 10th?
Yes, I think that's right.
So, what day is that? Is that Tuesday?
Tuesday, yes.
All right, so July 6th is Friday and then Tuesday. So those are the first two times that you talked to law enforcement about the murder, is that right?
Right.
And those were, the first one was not very long, but the 10th, I think y'all talked for hours, is that correct?
Every one of them seemed like hours.
Long to you, were they not?
Yes, they were.
Very uncomfortable?
Yes.
Don't want to do it again?
Ever.
But you weren't forthcoming in all your answers, were you?
I didn't know my name.
But you knew enough to talk for several hours, though. Would you agree with that?
I don't think I talked for several hours.
But you did give information.
I might have been questioned for several hours, but I don't think I talked for several hours.
You did give information each time you talked to them, right?
I'm assuming I did.
And you didn't tell the whole truth in the beginning, did you?
Don't think so.
Well, you know you didn't tell the truth.
No.
It's a lot easier if you just come out and say it. You didn't. You go with the TBI, how they treated you. You didn't necessarily like how the sheriff's office treated you.
Correct.
And that was because the demeanor of Sergeant Pope.
That is true.
Tell the jury how he was with you.
Very aggressive, vulgar, pushy, finger stuck up to my nose. I would back up. He would pull forward. I would back up. He would pull forward. Did that 3 times once. I had to ask him. Actually, I think I asked Detective Hayes to have Pope leave the room.
Yeah. And how big are you, sir?
Sir?
How tall and how much do you weigh at the time in 2018?
Well, 6'3". I'm assuming that I'm still 6'3" and was then. I don't know. I'm probably in the 250 range.
Around 250. I think you went to the doctor and weighed one morning about 240 something. But do you remember what size Sergeant Pope was?
I wouldn't classify him as a great big fella.
No. And he never hit you, did he?
No, he never did hit me.
He never put a finger on you, did he?
He was very close. So I don't know if he touched me or not.
Well, I mean, he shook your hand, I assume, that day.
Well, yeah, but that's different.
But he didn't threaten to hurt you.
I think you're talking aggression.
Sure, he didn't threaten to hurt you or strike you or harm you or anything like that.
No.
Just was bad cop.
Yes.
I mean, got to cussing at you.
Yes.
Talked about death penalty, things
Yes.
like that. Talked about murder cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put the fear in you. Fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing pretty good. You're going to say yes or no.
Sir?
You're going to say yes or no. Not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should know that.
It's all right.
It's all right. You've
You
done
don't-
pretty good until now.
Yeah, you haven't. You don't do this every day. I mean, at one point he talks about the serious nature of the case, and they expose you to how serious of a case this is. Is that fair?
Yes.
And do you understand when someone's murdered and then burned, that is aggravating under the law? That is very serious.
Do not know the terminology, but it is serious, yes.
Would you agree murder is one thing, but then burning the body is also adding to that?
Of course, yes.
So we're not talking about jaywalking or speeding. This is serious. And at one point they came with, I guess, fake arrest warrants or some type of warrants for you for two charges.
There was a arrest warrant given to me. I just immediately gave it to my attorney.
Right. A physical piece of paper.
Correct.
But not have been issued into the computer or signed by a judge. They just said, here's the things we're looking at with you,
The
right?
way I understood that it was an unsigned arrest warrant.
And do you remember what those charges were?
I do not.
Conspiracy and then concealing, do you remember?
No, sir, I do not.
But you do remember they presented you with an arrest warrant.
Correct.
You didn't like that, did you?
Well, no, I was scared to death.
Sure. Your attorney, Bobby Carter, after July 6th, so I think it's going to be July 10th of 2018, July 24th of 2018, and then June 25th of 2019. When you met, your attorney was with you during the whole time, right? Outside the first time.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and he's a good guy, very smart guy, right?
Bobby?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, a good man.
Yes.
And he's actually a judge up there now, correct?
Correct.
So he knows what he's doing, right?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, you trusted him, correct?
I do.
You relied on him, right?
Yes.
And he would give you advice when this was going on, saying, I think this is in your best interest, or this is in your best interest, right?
It was, yes.
And that was putting on your mind of, I need to do some of these things, correct?
Yes.
So he was advising what he thought was in their best interest, and you agreed and did things for law enforcement, right?
We put a tap on my phone.
In fact, do you remember that during some of these meetings with law enforcement, y'all would be getting at it, and you'd have to stop and go out and meet with Bobby, and then y'all would meet and confer, and you come back in, and then y'all would talk more. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Because he'd have to talk to you, give you information, and then you would come and do certain things, right?
Bobby would try to calm me down.
Sure. I mean, an example would be Ashley Pope confronted you about, where's your phone? If you're innocent, can we go through your phone? And you hesitated, correct?
I do not recall.
Do you remember going out, getting the phone after talking to your attorney, and then giving them the phone so they could try to dump the contents?
I do remember us giving them my phone and them trying to dump it in some electronic box there at Bobby's, and it didn't work.
But you had left your phone in the car when you were meeting with law enforcement. Is that right?
I don't recall.
Now, during these meetings, some of them were just long. They were just long meetings, right?
Yes.
And you've had an opportunity to listen to some of these meetings?
Some of them, yes.
You go back and try to remember as much as you can, correct?
I tried.
And they can get aggressive. Y'all can get at it. Both sides, and Pope could go at you pretty good.
I don't remember both sides getting aggressive, but yes. Pope.
Oh, that's fair. Sergeant Pope could get aggressive with you.
Correct.
But they were pushing you because they felt like you weren't telling them everything. Is that
Yes.
fair?
Uh-huh.
And you were not telling them everything, right?
Oh.
You were holding
Well,
back.
I didn't, yeah.
Yeah. But then at the same time, did you listen to it? Could you hear? Y'all sit around and ate candy together. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all, I mean, I know you don't like watermelon because you didn't want watermelon during these meetings, correct?
Correct.
So during these heated meetings and when things are getting fierce, y'all could at the next moment get together and eat candy. So it just went up and down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Judge, this is a good. Can we stop here?
We'll take 10. You can step down. I'll get them to refill it. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Barney, you can go to the restaurant and then come back. I'd leave the text out, just leave it here.
right, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Barton, I want to talk about the interviews themselves. I have July 6th of 2018, I think it's a Friday. July 10th, 2018, which is a Tuesday. And then July 24th, 2018 is a Tuesday. And then August 2nd, 2018 is a Thursday. And June 25th, 2019. Do you have anything to write with, sir? Do you have anything to write with there or anything?
No, sir. I got paper, but what? I got one.
May I approach you to give a legal pad?
Sure. Yeah. Oop. That's not good.
All right, for defense counsel, the dates again are July 6, 2018. It's a Friday. July 10th, 2018. July 10th, 2018 is a Tuesday. Mm-hmm. July 24th, 2018, I think is a Tuesday. August 2nd, 2018, a Thursday. June 25th, 2019, which is a Tuesday. So I'm going to begin with July 6, 2018.
Okay.
Do you remember that to be meeting, I think, was it at your house with the TBI agents?
Daughter's house, but that's where I was living, so yes.
What do you remember about them showing up?
I was there alone upstairs in my bedroom. Heard, I don't remember, doorbell, knock on the door, dogs barking, something. Came out, I can look down onto the foyer and I could see several people walking away down the sidewalk. So I ran down the stairs and around through the kitchen and out into the garage and opened up the big garage door and because they were out in the parking area.
And did you let them in your house to talk to you?
I did.
And did y'all have how would you describe the conversation?
Pleasant, professional. It was fine.
Did you know why they were there?
Well, not initially, but they told me.
What do you remember them asking you why or saying why they were there?
They just said that, asked me did I know Gary and Melody Farris, and I said I did, and that they were, I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but basically that they were investigating a murder. And that Gary had been murdered, and then there was an attempt for a cover-up, and they just wanted to talk to me about my whereabouts.
What, do you remember them asking you when was the last time that you talked to Melody?
I do not remember that, but
do you remember them asking whether it was a day ago, a week ago, a month ago, or a year ago? Do you remember that phraseology?
I think it was something like that, yes.
Do you remember saying maybe a week?
Well, I listened to the tape that you gave me, so yes.
Okay. So your answer on that day was the last time you talked to her was maybe a week?
Correct.
But you do agree with me, if you look at the calendar there, is it not true that you got July the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, Tuesday the 3rd going into Wednesday the 4th. You agree with me that there were 3 main phone calls that you had with the defendant that night going into the next day?
I do.
Why didn't you tell them about those?
I don't know.
They asked you when was the last time you saw her in person. Do you remember what your answer was?
I do not.
if it was last summer or last year, do you remember saying that?
I do not remember what I said. No, sir.
Let me ask you today, going back on that, there at your house on July 6, 2018, when was the last time you physically saw the defendant?
I do not recall.
You have any idea? I know you're saying you don't recall, but do you have any idea?
No, sir. But you do, so you can tell me.
You said you listened to the recording. Do you remember after they told you Gary had been murdered and they were asking you questions about Melody? Do you remember pausing for quite some time and then saying, I don't know what I should be telling you?
I remember hearing that.
So you wouldn't dispute if you heard yourself say that you did do that?
I wouldn't dispute anything that there's a recording of.
Why did you say, I don't know what I should be telling you? Why did you hesitate to tell law enforcement about the defendant?
I'm being interviewed by the TBI for a murder that I know nothing about. You don't say nothing.
Did you do the murder?
No, sir.
Where were you in July 3rd, 4th, and 5th of 2018?
You should have a copy of that chart that I made that tells, and I have a copy of it, but I don't have it with me.
I just want you to tell the jury where
I
were
was
you
in,
at.
Tullahoma, my area.
Law enforcement got receipts and your phone records and
Yes.
showed you were not in Georgia, correct?
Correct. Even grocery receipts.
I think a video showing you getting groceries or something.
Sir?
A video showing you getting groceries?
Detective Hayes knows what my pasta salad recipe is now.
So if you didn't have anything to do with the actual murder, again, what would hesitate you to tell them what you did know?
If you don't know what you're talking about, keep your mouth shut.
But we've already established that you talked to the defendant over the 3rd and 4th for 3 phone calls, right?
Yes.
One of those was about 2 o'clock in the morning?
I think approximately. I don't know exactly.
Why did you give the defendant a credit card?
Because occasionally she said Gary would cut the credit cards off, and I didn't want her to just be stranded and not be able to, get gas or something to eat.
In 2018, in July, when they talked to you, were you still in a relationship with the defendant?
Yes.
Still sexual in nature?
Yes. But at that point, we had not seen each other in quite some time. This thing is echoing.
It's okay. But you were still having the affair, still ongoing.
We were still talking.
I think we argue over words. You were still in the same relationship you had been with her, right?
Just not physical.
She had your credit card?
She did.
Still talking every day, sometimes twice a day?
Yes.
And, pardon me, but during those conversations, y'all would talk about sex and everything else?
That's true.
Sounds like a relationship, right?
Not arguing that. No, I'm not. I'm not trying to. Yeah.
How much did the defendant like to clean?
A lot.
Is she a neat freak?
Yes.
Do you remember one of her friends by the name of Sherry?
Yes.
Did she spell her name differently?
Yes.
How does Sherry spell her name?
Don't know. I just remember that it was different.
It was different than normally spelled.
Yes.
Who was Sherry? Who is Sherry?
Just a friend of hers. I don't really know where Sherry came into the picture at or even where she lived.
Did Sherry go to Emily's wedding?
Yes.
How close of friends were the defendant and Sherry?
At the time, pretty close.
Do you know how they would spend their time together?
No, not really. I mean, I know they spent time together, but I don't know what all they would do.
Did you go to Jamaica with the defendant?
I did.
When was that?
September of 17,
How long did y'all go?
about a week.
Where'd y'all go? What, do you remember the name of the resort?
Hito.
Excuse me?
Hito.
Hito? And do you know if the defendant has Sherry do anything with a credit card?
No, I don't know that.
What did she tell her children where she was at?
I don't know. Like I said, she could come and go as she pleased, so I don't, that was,
She could even go to Jamaica for 10 days or so and not question her whereabouts?
I'm assuming.
But you don't know what she said to her children?